but do that. Is this even real?
Hello there fellow Lensflare and camera shackers, my name is rickkmurray and welcome to my little video thingy-mabobby. Today I am going to be leaving my home country Australia and will be flying over to Japan, and I am going to be bringing you guys along with me. So let's jump on this plane and make our way over to the Narita airport in Japan. So once I landed, it was time for me to go through the Narita airport customs, which was a little bit tricky at first, but I did manage to figure it out. And now I had to do the tricky part, which was getting from the airport to my hotel located in Asakusa. Now, of course, at this time, me being very new to Japan, I still had no idea how the subway systems completely work, and I ended up getting lost at one of these stations. So I ended up walking around mindlessly for a while, trying to figure it out, but eventually I was able to get on the Asakusa line, which would take me to the Kurumi Station, which is where my hotel is located. And before this point, it didn't feel like as though I was in Japan yet. It still felt like a Western-ish styled setting, and I didn't really have that sense of I'm in Japan. However, once I arrived at the Kurumi Station and surfaced onto the streets, that is when I had fully realized I was in Japan. So the hotel that I am checking into is MyCube, and it is a Capsule Hotel, and I'll be spending my entire time here. So what I did is I simply checked in, dropped off my bags, and went for a bit of a night stroll. Now, even though I was very exhausted from the flight, I still had the urge to just experience the sounds and the sights that Japan had at nighttime. So I ventured on out and decided to get myself some dinner, and I came across a very nice ramen place to get myself some ramen for dinner and had my very first Japanese meal in Japan. But after walking around for a little bit, I decided to return to the Capsule Hotel to get some rest, to regain some energy for tomorrow. Now, unfortunately, in the morning, I woke up feeling a little bit sick and ended up having to stay at the hotel for about 2 or 3 hours to recover. But when I was feeling at least somewhat better, I decided to venture on out and make my way to Akihabara, which is not too far from where I am. Now, I could have taken public transport, but I thought I'd get better views if I just simply walked. So after walking for about half an hour, I finally came to every weeboo's favorite place, known as Akihabara. Now, unfortunately, I got here a little bit too early in the morning as nothing was open, and I was a little bit confused as to why it was so quiet. But after about half an hour to an hour, Akihabara opened its eyes, and suddenly this quiet little area woke up again, and I was at complete awe. It took every ounce of energy from me not to go on a spending spree. One thing I found very interesting was the Pachinko stores. They were like these gambling areas, but they were extremely noisy. It was like as if there were multiple machine guns going off at once. And it was amazing to me seeing just people chilling there, relaxing, and I'm kind of standing there like, how are you not going blind from being deaf so hardly? What the hell am I even saying? One thing that didn't surprise me, yet sort of surprised me about Akihabara is that almost every single store had an adult section. Some stores even had multiple floors dedicated to hentai, or just porn, whatever you feel like calling it. So after exploring around Akihabara a little bit, I came into a cafe at the top floor of this store right here, which was some kind of social cafe where fans of a certain game that I can't remember the name of would come here and sort of socialize and talk about it, because the cafe was themed towards this anime/game. So the waiter came up to me and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what I walked into. He sort of like escorted me to a table that had a bunch of local Japanese girls who only knew how to speak Japanese, and they were fans of the game. And I had no idea how to speak Japanese at the time, so I would use Google Translate to talk to them, and they would also use Google Translate to talk to me. Now, unfortunately, I was not allowed to film in this cafe, so I can only show you what I can, I guess. But it was a great experience. I didn't stay for too long because I just felt really out of place. But again, I thought it was a fantastic experience and I loved it. Shortly after that cafe, I went downstairs and I was stopped by a maid, and she was asking me to come with her to a maid cafe. Thought to myself, sure, why the hell not? And I followed her to a maid cafe. Now, just like the previous cafe, I was not allowed to film inside the cafe. I was allowed to film my food, but not the maids. So that made things a little bit tricky, but I did run into an English guy by the name of Tim, who was also visiting Japan around the same time as myself, and this was his first time to a maid cafe as well, and the two of us were a little bit nervous, I guess. So the maid sat me down and gave me their menu, and I chose the dessert combo, which came with a drink and a dessert of my choice. The combo also came with a souvenir and a photo with one of the maids. After a little bit of waiting, she came back out with my drink, and we both did some kind of kawaii dance thing where she performed this little act and I would follow along with her. It was strange. Shortly after, she brought out my dessert and we repeated the process. Nico, Nico, Nico. While I was eating, one of the maids stuck bear ears on my head and I got up to take a photo. She tried to sell a dance performance to both Tim and myself, but we turned it down, and she made us feel guilty in a fun way, but we still felt guilty. Something both Tim and I would discover that every maid is good at doing. But in the end, she ended up performing anyway. Turns out one of the other guys had ordered the act. With my experience in the maid cafe, I found it was really awkward. I found out that you kind of have to commit, otherwise you'll make it even more awkward. I think you simply need to let go of the mindset of what you find is normal and just get into it. After all, normal isn't fixed. So after the maid cafe, Tim and I went for a bit of an exploration around Akihabara, and the one thing I really loved about today was that it was an anime character's birthday, and a lot of stores were celebrating her birthday. There would be like chalkboards and stuff like that, or stickers and whatnot that fans could write to her and then stick on to this board to share with everyone within the store. And it was an amazing thing to see, because this is something you don't get in the West. People celebrating fictional characters' birthdays. Another thing that we walked into was like a little mini museum based on a game I think is called Poppin' Q. But it was really cool to see like animatics and storyboards and almost like the behind the scenes of how anime is created. So after spending the remainder of the day out at Akihabara, as I decided to call it a day as we're heading late into the night. So I made my way back to my hotel where my feet felt like steel. But before I call it a night, I might as well show you guys what I picked up out at Akihabara. So this was a business card by the maid cafe that I went to today. On the front is simply their contact details, and then on the back she wrote my name once in English and then again in Japanese. She also asked what my favorite animal was, and I said a fox, and she drew like a little fox as well. They also gave me this cool maid keychain as a souvenir for attending their maid cafe. This was one of many other gifts. I chose this one. So that is it for me today. I shall wrap this video here and I shall see you guys tomorrow. See you then.